Today, in the USA Today, there is an article by our old buddy Dan Wolken. Opinion, NCAA poised to let athletes cash in. Sonny Vaccaro, who helped open the door, can't wait. And in fact, the last phrase in the entire article is a Sonny quote, and it says, "There's a market for every demographic and age group in the world. That's why they make baby food and put a baby on the bottle. There's a value of the individual they said had no value. Thousands of kids will benefit from a few kids' efforts a long time ago. It's one of the happiest days of my life." Sonny Vaccaro is a legendary shoe executive. He's the godfather of grassroots basketball. He is one of our absolute favorite guys. The Godfather's here. Sonny, it's been too long.
It has, Christopher. It has. A lot of things have passed under us and over us. But we're at this day, and I'm happy that I can talk to you and your fans. And I'm happy that I read Dan Wolken's article today, and I hadn't talked to Dan. And in fact, for your audience, I met him at Richard Southpaw, one of his first meetings. He was down at the University of Memphis for sports backing and all that. And Richard Southpaw was an advocate for the athletes, and Dan was in the audience, and that was the first time, I think, the only time I ever saw him. And we've been talking over the years, and then he writes his story, which I knew it was a story, but I thought of other people. But it hit home. I mean, it was something that I didn't anticipate or ask for or wouldn't have thought of unless Dan called me. And him being a great reporter, this is what we got. And I feel, and I've said this to you a number of years, you especially, because I've probably done media with you longer than anybody. I mean, it's been years since you were first a young whippersnapper. And, we started talking from Memphis and, the various changes you've made in your life. But I've been live to Memphis, and it's ironic, that here we are at the end of, nothing's, I don't want to be, morbid here, but at the end of this world that I entered, and I probably said to you, Chris, a couple of times, that this will be my ultimate dream. And I said to Dan's column, I didn't know I'd live to see it. Well, we haven't, it's not entirely done, but it's done. Abandoned what we started out to do with all the naysayers a long time ago, Eddie and all the plaintiffs and Michael Hausfield and Ken Feinberg and everybody involved with the case and all the other athletes that backed Eddie up, and including Bill Russell and Elgin Baylor and all these guys. Oscar Robertson was so helpful. So now you take over. I'm sorry, but I had to say that.
Okay, so for those unaware, when you talk about this being one of the happiest days of your life, I do just want to give a little background. I was actually, and this speaks to how long we have been speaking about this very subject. Right before you came on, I told the story about how when I came home from the hospital after my son was first born, there was a huge box from you and your wife of baby clothes you sent him. But Sonny, my son is 10 now. So, I was telling that story like it was yesterday. My son is 10, and so that's how long, you've been fighting this fight. Lot longer than that. But just to put it into context, all right. So once upon a time, Ed O'Bannon is playing the video game because I think there's a lot of people now. It happened so long ago that they don't really know how it all happened. Ed O'Bannon is playing a video game. It is the EA Sports college basketball video game. There is the 1995 UCLA team on the game. Ed O'Bannon is 6'9", looks exactly like Ed O'Bannon, is left-handed. It's Ed O'Bannon, right? And he's thinking, wait, how come we don't make anything off of this? And so the original fight was, and this is why you got Bill Russell, Oscar Robertson, all these people involved, was they can't own you forever, right? If Florida sells a Tim Tebow jersey, after he's gone from the school, Tim Tebow should benefit. Or if Cincinnati sells a Oscar Robertson signed lithograph, he should make some money off of that. The idea that they own you forever was really the fight, but now that has morphed into something even much greater, which is being able – and so that fight was you won the fight, right? And so then people then unfortunately blamed it for the reason we don't have – college games, in the video games, and I would always tell people the truth is the reason we don't have college video games is because they don't want to pay people. That was free. They got to do it for free, and so instead of anybody benefiting from it outside of them, they just paid the colleges, and then they got to use all of these guys' likenesses. And so now this might be a step towards, so that was one fight, but it's gone further. And now it is the current players. And can the current players benefit off of their name and likeness while they are in school? And that is what they are having to discuss today, which I believe is why you said this is one of the happiest days of your life.
Yeah, it is, and you summed it up real well, and I know people could follow you. But it started from that and got to this, and it took all that time. But we got there, and I'm still here on earth, and thank God through all the things we've gone through, and me personally, but not to be selfish, these kids and these athletes. And the thing that I loved about Dan's article was that last paragraph. And then if you go one step further, Chris, you would have said, and women are now going to be able to profit. Because when we started talking, you and I, over a various amount of subjects, women were an afterthought. Remember, it was Title IX. We can't do this because Title IX. Well, Title IX was the lesser groups and women's sports. I mean, well, you know what? Women's sports, these athletes are going to be compensated. And I just think we saw an emergence of a superstar. Whether she's going to be that great on the court is the Ionescu girl, the one who was eulogized at Kobe's tragedy, the thing for Kobe a couple months ago, where she was Kobe's person. He loved women's basketball. Well, we've not only watched women's basketball, we've watched women's soccer and swimming and ice skating and everything else that they do play in college. Well, and I can always think of the Ledecky girl, the great swimmer that had 9,000, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, gold medals, but she couldn't make 5 cents, and and all these young girls their value is valuable, and that's sort of what that thing with the baby thing. I never said that before in my life, but that's what it is. Women have a market value now, and that's all I ever wanted.
But the idea, right? The idea is, that's a good one, Katie Ledecky, right? Who could not risk everything or else not be able to go to college because she had made all of this money, therefore no longer being an amateur. So the idea was always everybody else can make a lot of money off of Katie Ledecky except for Katie Ledecky, right? Which, I mean, I think any reasonable person thinks is goofy.
Well, it is, and hopefully it was. That's what we're coming to. And I just read the other day that Katie's swimming in her backyard swimming pool to go back to the Olympics, and that's why she passed up all the money to go back to the Olympics. And God forbid that these Olympics are canceled or whatever reason. We know why they are now. But the point was the fragility of the athlete and time that they can earn money, Chris, is minute by minute. You and I both know that. If Zion Williamson would have broke his ankle that day, we never would have been talking about Zion, and maybe because he's really a good kid and it'll add to society, similar to what LeBron has done. But my point here is it could all been over for what? Let's be honest. For what?
Oh, think about Tua. He just got drafted very highly. But, we are at maybe a centimeter away from career ending with what happened with his hip.
And you know what? It still may resurface, and we don't know that until he's hit again. That's when I go back and I look at all these names over all these years, it was game, set, match. And Chris, one of the most horrible things I've ever watched during my lifetime in sports. It's nice for the moment, but God forbid when one of these athletes gets one of those injuries, whether it's concussion or broken leg, and they're tied into that thing that the thing that they take you to the hospital truck over on the sidelines, and the kids put their hands up and they say, "Thumbs up, I'm okay." You know what, Chris? Unfortunately, that thumb up was the last time they were able to move their hands or arms or think or definitely play sports again. It's such a infinite number of minutes you have to play a sport and earn money. You can be like Stephen King. We know a lot of people in history that had a lot of deformities and problems with everything except their mind, and they went on to have the most productive lives in the world. But an athlete can only be productive if he can produce playing ball.
So the NBA Board of Governors is going to meet today. It's going to take formal steps forward towards allowing athletes to profit off their name, image, and likeness in ways that would have been considered blasphemous by the so-called leaders of college athletics just a few years ago. This is what Dan Wolken wrote. Product and apparel endorsements, sure. Paid autographs, Why not? Selling memorabilia to make a few bucks? That's likely going to be allowed too, according to the recommendations made by a working group that college presidents deputized last fall to study how to modernize NCAA rules with the organization under significant pressure from federal and state lawmakers. The question becomes, Sonny, it's the irony of all this is truly unbelievable, because as they meet today to decide how much they will allow a kid to make off of himself, we have another announcement. I don't know if you heard this, but this morning we'd already had Jalen Green and Isaiah Todd. Jalen Green, possibly the top player in this class, going to do the G League, a developmental year. Isaiah Todd, who was going to go to Michigan, who was a top 50 recruit, followed suit. And now possibly the top point guard in the class of 2021, so not even this upcoming class, Dasheen Nix, who is committed to UCLA, decommitted this morning, is going to the G League, and is going to make upwards of $300,000 just, right off the bat. Now, who knows what else the kid might end up with by the time. So as they are discussing in these meetings if they're going to let somebody sell their bowl jersey or sign a basketball and sell it or whatever else, you've got a kid saying, I'm not going to college, I'm going to go make $300,000. The irony of all of this is that, for at least basketball-wise, we've got to at least broach the subject that it might be too late.
Well, it might be, but what it will do is allow, let's say, that, because they're only taking 5 kids, I think. Am I right, Chris? So these 5 kids, so they got 3, and there's 2 more. That's what I understand from pretty good sources, okay? So what it'll do, though, it may detour you if you're pretty good but you're not that good or something like that, even thinking about doing it, because now you can go and earn. And you know what, Chris? A couple of these kids might earn, I'm saying might very loosely, Chris. The Green kid, from what I understand, is everything that some of these other ones are also. I don't think he's Zion, but I don't know. I knew Zion much better than I knew this kid. But my point here is it may stop somebody, but it's not going to stop anybody. And I keep going back to the Simmons kid at LSU. Remember him? And remember that video they did on him? I thought that was one of the most honest videos an athlete ever did in their life, when he actually mocked what the hell was happening at LSU. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but I thought that was he just said, what am I doing? And then when the season was over, he was the first one to say, what am I doing? I packed whatever bag he had and he left. Well, I think they can put a stop to that. I think by allowing not so much a Simmons kid or the Green kid or Zion possibly, that would have been, in my mind, a sacrilege if he'd have gone to college under these things right now. But my point to you is it may allow some of them to stay in. And if some of them don't stay in, that $100 billion they're paying for the Final Four, it's going to be interesting someday, Chris.
Well, let me ask you this, Sonny, because you are, the way this all started, you were the original guy to sign up shoe deals with university athletic programs, okay? So I did wonder this, if they're going to open it up to being able to make money off your likeness. Is a possible situation where Zion Williamson says, I will go to Duke. You know what? I don't want to do the G League thing. I've always wanted to go to college. I want to play in the NCAA tournament. I want to play for Coach K. I will go to Duke. And then Under Armour says, hey, we'll give you $100 million to wear our shoes at Duke. But Duke's already got a ridiculous deal with Nike. I mean, this is something that can't come up, right? Am I crazy here?
Chris, I swear to God Almighty, okay? Kobe Bryant, in his infinite wisdom as a child, turned to me at the dinner when he finally announced he was going. At the press conference we had for him in New York City, we went to an Italian restaurant, and he turned to me. Never before was it ever discussed. Now, he was about, he was going to sign the Adidas contract for over $1 million, and Joe was getting paid and all that sort of stuff. He turned to me, and it was over a dish of pasta, okay? And he said, Mr. Vaccaro, if I would have gone to Duke, that's why I believe today he was going to Duke, could I have signed this contract with you? It was never discussed, Chris. You know what I'm saying? Because at that point in time, he wasn't going to go. We never thought of signing a high school kid, going to college. We never did that. And I said to him, Kobe, there's no way in hell you were going to wear whatever. And he says, well, I made the right decision. It was big, one of those smiles he has. He also made a decision before he even knew that answer, Chris. But I'll never forget, that would have been something that he would. What if we would have given him $1 million in 1996? You know what I'm saying? Maybe he would have. Maybe they'd all go stay in school. I don't know. But it's all about money.
But what I'm saying is, does this destroy that whole amount of money that the schools get? You can speak from this from a business side. Let's say I've got, like, obviously it's great to have the best players, but if I've got, I don't know, Alabama as a Nike school, but I get Tua wearing Adidas cleats, you know? Like, I mean, all of a sudden, who's getting the money, the kid or the program?
Well, isn't that what this is about?
I guess so.
Why should I started this in 1976, 77, tell your audience. I went directly to the coaches. The coaches have never been harmed by accepting the money that me and the rest of the shoe companies did for the next 50 years, Chris. Why shouldn't a player do it? And the reason I said it, and it's documented, and it will be when you finally read the end of Sonny's life, my point to you is, we signed them so I can get those kids to wear the shoes. And I said to Phil Knight and Rob Strasser, the high school kids, we'll get the high school kids, but not only that, we're now going to get the college guys. Why are we getting? Well, the coaches are going to make them wear the shoes, and we don't have to pay the college guys. Chris, that was the whole platform of my idea in 1970. I never shied away from that, and you were on, you'd always come up with somebody who was beating my butt up or something. I started it. No, I didn't start it. The schools let me do it. I paid their coaches who gave the kids our shoes and wore them. Now what's going to happen, Towel could have got his own deal. They all could get their own. We don't give it, not shoe companies or anybody, no one cares who in the hell gets the money as long as their product is sold, Chris. Let's be honest about that to your audience today. Kobe Bryant would have got the money. If I thought he was good enough to do that, why wouldn't I think he's good? He's a celebrity. I thought high school kids were a celebrity in 1976, and they were.
I do have to ask you, as you have seen this all play out, and you said that someone has told you it's only going to be 5 kids a year.
Yeah.
This
year, Chris.
Okay, this year, but it's going to expand, right? And the NBA is behind this, so I do want to know what your opinion is of that avenue. Obviously, the kids are being taken care of financially.
Yep.
Yes. So this is an alternate route. It is not going overseas. Once upon a time, you helped with Brandon Jennings going overseas. Emmanuel Mudiay went overseas after he wasn't going to be able to get into SMU. We just saw LaMelo Ball and R.J. Hampton playing internationally this year, but this gives a domestic option for it. I am interested in your opinion of this G League route that has been created, and obviously already some high-level prospects are going to take advantage of.
Well, I think you're going to see the end of going to Europe, because the ones in the category that the NBA thinks they are by making them one of the 5 this year, they think that next year they're going to get drafted, hypothetically, let's just say in the lottery. If all these 5 kids go in the lottery or go well and do well in this league and they're teaching, the other thing your audience has to know, every coach on the floor for the next 365 days is going to be a professional coach for these kids. There's no high school coach. There's no AAU coach. There's no mom and pop, coaching them. They're professional coaches. They're going to get coaching. Now, that's what always the bitch was, Chris. They're not ready. They're not ready. You know what? Maybe they weren't ready. I don't know if they were, if they weren't. I'm not going to judge them. But I now know that the NBA is putting more money into hiring guys that are eventually going to be head coaches in the NBA. They're going to be the assistants. These are people who have given their life to learning the subject of coaching. So they are going to get the best. So I think this year they're betting a lot on these 5 kids. And I think there will be 10 kids next year. If that's your question, naturally.
My question is, do you like the option? Do you like the idea?
Oh, I'm enthusiastic. The only bad thing about it, I wish everybody would do it sooner, because the schools involved, all these kids had a school picked, and then you mentioned UCLA, and I know Mick really well. And but my point there is, I think if they would have known the option all year, I think the recruiting would have stopped. I mean, they're all going to praise their kids and all whatever. But you know what? They can't replace this kid at those 5 schools. You know that, don't you?
Right.
There's no way.
Right.
They're not getting these guys in replacement. They'll get a good player, blah, 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 blah. Because all the good ones are going to go to college now that aren't going to go in the G League here.
Oh, trust me, that Jalen Green kid, after his press conference, he said if I would have gone to college, I would have gone to Memphis. I mean, it's a different world for our buddy Penny Hardaway if that kid comes to Memphis next year.
Memphis. If James, is that the kid's name?
Wiseman.
The one that got Wiseman. Let me tell you, there's another that helped. What I believe was the best thing, his sadness and what they did to him. And I think I said this a long time ago on your show. What they do with him was a sacrilege, because that whole concept of what Penny did or did not do certainly should not, if any sane mind had anything to do with to think he was going to be the coach at Memphis all those years ago. Whatever Penny did to get his AAU team better, him and about 90 other guys that I know and personal friends with probably did the same thing. So I don't want to go through that crap. But what I'm saying, the dynasty was being built. I don't think Green would have been an outlier. I think they were going. I think they were going to be back on top. I don't know what that does now, other than the kids in Memphis are always good. But, ladies and gentlemen, Derrick Rose left you guys. James left you guys, and now Green left you guys. And sorry, but you couldn't stay much longer. It's ironic it is him. And the funny thing about him, and I don't know Penny that well. I've only known him that 7 or 8 days at camp or the Round Ball Classic in the 90s, Chris. I'll tell you what he's done in the city of Memphis, what he's done with his personal life, what he's done for kids, all his life, never in the wildest dreams I think of Penny. If he would have had a horrible dream one night and said about a horrible dream that here's my plan, I'm going to get rid of everybody, I'm going to demean them and all that, and I'm going to be the coach. Kenny Hardaway's never been made up like that. So I think, personally, this show does better for the city of Memphis and the people reading, because you got screwed. Because this should have happened a long time ago. And then Penny will be able to continue. But that Wiseman kid, whatever his name is, I apologize there. I screw up, Chris. But my point there is, they were on the... I would have made, if I was still betting with my brother in Las Vegas, which I haven't in 25, 30 years, Chris, I can always say that. But if I would have been, I would have, because my brother told me, he told me what had happened. He said, this kid had as good a chance, and he said kid. He said, this kid, meaning Memphis Tigers, Chris, had as good a chance as anybody in the country of being in the Final Four. How about that?
Oh, I believe
my brother's a professional, ladies and gentlemen.
Your brother, Jimmy Vaccaro, is a legendary bookmaker out in Vegas, and he's dead on right. Let me ask. I've got to ask you quickly about our buddy, our mutual friend for all these years, Dan Wetzel, was on with me a couple weeks ago, and I called Danny up after he was on that HBO documentary, The Scheme, and the subject, Christian Dawkins, of The Scheme, who is the player getter who the feds tried to trap in paying players, coaches to go to different schools and whatnot, said that when he realized he was not going to be a college athlete, that he read this book by Dan Wetzel called Soul Influence, who all of us know you are the subject of the book. Right. And Dan had this unbelievable quote and said, that book's not supposed to be a how-to manual about how amateur basketball is supposed to work. But I couldn't help but think of you as I'm watching that. Here you have this kid who is running around moving and shaking to the point where the feds are trying to get him. And he says that he was really inspired to get into what he got into by reading a book about you. Well,
it's funny, and he used my name also, and I was shocked that day. I don't know Christian. I've talked to him a few times on the phone, I'll tell your audience. Okay, I knew his daddy. His daddy was a great high school coach. He was always in the other camp with Nike or something like that. But I knew him, legendary. He was a wonderful coach, but he never played for any of my teams. And the way he said it, when they trapped him, and this idiot who was doing it, and Christian's a young kid still yet. And he said something very prophetic. Obviously, my wife, her hair, got gray, and because she thought it was a negative. I said, Pam, what he was basically saying, the Sonny Vaccaro wouldn't have fell into the trap of that idiot was doing. If something was done there, he was the dumbest guy trying to fix something to trap Christian and all these guys, because he was involved. He was a crook. He was the stupid. I mean, you can't be that stupid and do what he wanted and wanted to turn out this thing differently. But Christian Dawkins also said he was selling ratings to college guys when he was 14. I think the kid's brilliant, personally.
He was brilliant. All right, last thing. We are 4 episodes into The Last Dance, which was the highly anticipated documentary about Michael Jordan. We have covered many times your relationship with Jordan very early in his career and signing him up with Nike originally. As you have watched the first 4 episodes play out, what has stood out to you the most? What have you enjoyed the most about The Last Dance?
Are you sitting down?
Yes.
I will not watch this film, the first 8 films. Okay, I get replays every day, and I read about it from everyone's reading. And the reason I don't, because they interviewed me for 2.5 hours, so right down from my house. So I know that they took my voices. The only trouble with some people in life, and I've got to wait on this because I'm not going to make a statement, and I didn't want to see, because I didn't want to either get mad, angry, or happy, or whatever. Okay? Let me see what they play out. I know the story. I just don't want no fabrication. So I'm not going to watch it till it's all over. If I'm in it, then they have to use the things I said. You can't doctor it. I don't think the Russians are going to come in and play with the film on this. But my point to you is, I don't know, Chris. I don't know, because I read a book by the owner of Nike literally saying that I didn't exist. Well, I want to tell that story. So we're going to let Michael tell a story. There's no one in the world that has done more for marketing and whatever than Michael Jordan, and that was a great part of my life. So to answer your question, I'm going to watch it at the end, Chris. I'm going to watch it when it's all over, because I don't want one way or another to form an opinion without seeing what the end result. I don't want to say something now and.
Well, it's interesting because they have not broached at all any of the Air Jordan stuff or the marketing side of it or anything, and I do wonder if they will, because I have seen very briefly David Falk. You've only seen one small interview with him, right, who I know you are not exactly best of friends with, and we haven't seen anything with Phil Knight. There really hasn't been any Nike stuff in there at all, but I do know that there is a challenging of the stories that go on and how it all played out.
Well, in my opinion, there's no challenge. It's just making the record straight. But here's what I'm going to say. I pray for a lot of things, but the only thing that I have to tell you and your audience, they did tape me for 2.5 hours. Now, you know I like to talk, Chris. You, above all people, know I like to talk.
So you sat down with the makers of this doc?
Yes, for 2.5 hours. Just so we understand that, ladies and gentlemen, listening to this. Now what they do with it, they either edit what I said or cut me out, which is fine, but the editing's not fine. But you know what? Even in editing, they can only put what I said, so whatever. And I was very, very honest. I don't ever deny. Michael Jordan, to me, was one of the highlights of my life. I could never say anything negative about, I would never say it after death. But I just want the truth to be told and how it happened. That's all. So
this is really about Raveling and about Phil Knight and about all of those guys and their version and how their version changed as time has gone on because of your falling out with them.
Absolutely. But you know what? Other than Raveling, I have a personal issue with him longer than whatever. Other than Raveling, and I say it on your show, I have nothing. Phil and Michael and I did the greatest thing in the history of marketing. You can't deny it. I just don't. I want to make sure that everyone doesn't get amnesia on me here.
Fair enough.
That's all.
Hey, if you show up on an episode, I'll be on your phone the next day. Trust me.
Please do, and hopefully. This is a great story. A great whatever. And Dan Walken, and I met him in Memphis and all that sort of stuff. But you know what, Chris? It's the truth. And the other thing I get great pleasure of. The girls are going to get paid. This is a wonderful world, and
everybody's getting paid now, Sonny. Everybody's getting paid now.
Well, that's, and there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
Why do we have to make it undercover, right? Why?
No, listen, man. Hey, history can tell whatever kind of story you want. I know for sure that for over a decade you fought. You ain't profiting off this. You ain't going to make any money off of this. So. No. Who were you fighting for? You obviously cared about athletes. being able to make money off of their abilities. And you deserve to have this happy day. Celebrate. Maybe, order something in or something. I know you can't go anywhere.
Well, whatever. I may have my first glass of wine tonight since the thing. I sort of stopped a lot of things for Lent, and then I'm not punishing myself, but Pam and I both agreed this is suffering, so we're going to continue something, and we both picked out some things that we enjoy every night or whatever. So
there you go.
I'm doing that, but please watch your family. I can't believe the story of all these years. Oh my God,
crazy, right?
Your son. Oh
Crazy.
my God,
crazy.
All right, God bless you, your family. Watch yourself, please, and everybody listening. And to Penny Hardaway, I meant everything I said. Okay.
Thanks, Sonny.
Bye, guys.
Sonny Vaccaro, legendary shoe executive, godfather of grassroots basketball.